So joining me now on the show is actor, musician, singer, songwriter, Mark Stevens. Hello, Mark. Thank you for coming on the show.
Jonathan, how are you? Thank you for having me. It's great to be here. It's good to be here.
So a lot of our listeners would have known you from, and I hope you don't mind talking about that particular Aussie soap, but you're from Tasmania, aren't you, originally? And so how on earth did you end up on the telly?
Yeah, I grew up in Tasmania. I was 13. I'd written a couple of songs and I had a crush on a girl in my music class at school, and she spoke to the teacher about one of the songs that I'd written, and I ended up singing it in front of the class. And then the crush that she found out about a talent quest and told me about it. It was like a national talent quest. So I put my song into the talent quest. It was like an X Factor thing. And I came first place. And there was a producer from a kids show that saw me win the talent quest. So on the back of that, I became a part of a large kids show, singing and dancing for a few years. And then after I finished that, I got myself an agent thinking she'd help me with my singing career. And she got me an acting audition for a show called Neighbours. And I auditioned. I'd never acted before. Don't claim to be a good actor at all, but I kind of grew into understanding it. And had the opportunity to work on Neighbours for nearly 3 years. Great. I mean, Neighbours was watched by 50 million people around the world, so it was pretty iconic and huge back in the late 80s, early 90s.
It was indeed. I mean, everybody went do-dally over it here in the UK. I mean, especially when you guys came over to do Panto. I mean, it was like, you know, Jason Donovan and people like that, and Kylie and Danny. But you worked with Danny Minogue on the talent show?
Yeah, so Young Talent Time was the most popular kids show on Australian television. It did 21 seasons, 50 shows a year. And it was a show that I grew up watching. It was created by a guy called Johnny Young. And Johnny Young had these 10 budding young singer, songwriter, dancers, artists that he empowered and put on the show. 5 guys, 5 girls, Danny Minogue being one of them. I mean, some of the kids would come and go because you could only stay till you were 16. And, you know, then your time was up, really. So Danny was a part of the show for, I think, about 7 or 8 years. And I worked with her for nearly 4 years. And became great friends. My mum was actually best friends with her mum, Carol Minogue. So we knew the Minogue family very, very well, yeah.
That's incredible. You know, just hearing kind of like names, which I know many people in the UK would go, oh, wow. And it's like, you know, your mum is like friends with. I mean, it's incredible. So was there something in you that wanted fame? Was there something in you that wanted to be famous?
No, I just always loved music. I remember, you know, listening to artists like ABBA, Michael Jackson. Who else did we? Kiss. I loved the band Kiss when I was a kid, and I would just get together with my mates and we'd pretend to be in a band. So we'd just sing together, and then we created our own band. My best friend who lived up the road, his father was in a local band, and he's quite a good player, great singer too, guitarist. And so we used all of his kit in his garage, and we started our own band called the Blackouts. It was just a kind of a natural progression of enjoying music, and I loved to sing. And then I started to write music on the back of that. Mum and Dad got a piano at home, and I would just be on it for hours learning by ear. And then I got some lessons. And like I said, I had a crush on this girl in my music class who told me about a talent quest. And I just by happenstance, Jonathan, I kind of stumbled into fame, and then worked in the industry for many, many years after that. So no, there was nothing in me that really desired fame at all. I just love music and love creativity.
That's interesting, because you hear it a lot, you know, some of the guests I've had on, sometimes there's this like inner wanting to be somebody or wanted to be known. And sometimes that's kind of like, you know, looked at, and you kind of search for that in different things. But after Neighbours then, I know you came over to the UK and you did some theatre, you did some panto. So what happened then?
Yeah. Well, I mean, my time on Neighbours came to an end. You know, when you're on a show for 2.5 years, and I got itchy feet really, and wanted to get back into my music. And when you're on a show as popular as that, you know, the doors fling wide open, and there's always lots of opportunity happening. So I did lots of stuff in Australia and got back into working in music, and then got a phone call from a lady in London who was an agent who was sorting all the guys from Neighbours out and putting them in different pantomimes around the country. So I got offered the lead role in Aladdin at the Stockport Theatre in Manchester, in Salford, Manchester, I think it was. And so I came over and I did panto, worked with a guy called Danny LaRue. That was interesting. and did the show with Rachel Friend, who was another lady from Neighbours. She was very popular. So and it was just ridiculous, Jonathan. Coming to the UK, it was like the show was watched 2 times a day. It was watched by 22 million people every day. You couldn't walk down the street. You needed bodyguards. It was another level of attention that I certainly wasn't used to. So I did the panto, got paid very, very well for that, and then signed a record deal with BMG, RCA Records, and started to tour on the very quickly, recorded records, and was out there on the road with a band called Take That, with E17, with Chesney Hawkes, with Sonia, with Radio 1, and my life quickly went to a new level, and that's when it got very, very interesting, to say the least.
I'm sure. I guess with that attention, do you feel that sometimes, you know, you want to be understood and you got all this attention, but you're longing for intimacy. You're longing to, there's a different level. You keep saying a different level. What happened then? Was it all hunky-dory? Was it all having a good time? Were there some dark moments?
You know, I think life's all about gift and character. And I think we've learned about this, particularly being in church or hearing great speakers and mentors speak. You know, if you know, your gift will take you places. If you've got a strong gift in music, it's going to take you places and open doors for you. But if your character is not formed and developed enough, particularly as a young person, you're going to make a lot of mistakes. You're going to say yes to things you should say no to, particularly drugs and alcohol, or relationships. You know, you're going to be deceived or led in a direction that, you know, because you're too trusting, like I was very naive. So I think, you know, the gift outweighed the character. So I started to make some silly choices in terms of drug taking. You're 12,000 miles away from home, from your mum and dad, and mum and dad were going through a bit of a volatile time in their marriage. You know, I talk about this in school, so it's nothing I don't discuss, but I think that exacerbated a lifestyle for me of escapism, and I think that turmoil in the background that was boiling there was causing me to make decisions as well, and to want to stay away from home instead of returning. I mean, my little sister Emma went into care when she was 14 and had left the home. She was 7 years younger than me. So there was all that boiling and simmering in the background, plus a career that was really lifting off, and a lack of character, I think. So, you know, drugs started to really take over my life in the UK. Okay,
so you reached a low point, would you say? In your high point of life, you reached a low point?
I didn't feel like it was a low point. Everyone around me was doing the same thing, and actually some more so than me. You know, you've got management, and you've got agents, and you've got A&R people, artists and relations people, who are doing the same thing in terms of drug taking and partying and staying up all hours. I wasn't at a low point. I guess I was at a high point. I think some things hit you by stealth in life. So they take you by surprise, and they come in underneath things. They don't directly hit you in the face although they can creep into your world. I think that's how negative circumstances arrived for me. And it came in the space of addiction and medicating myself to feel better about my reality. I didn't really like reality that much. You know, when I came down off drugs, I'd have to face the cold hard facts of a life that I couldn't fix.
So what did fix your life, if you don't mind me asking?
You know what? I think over a 4 or 5 year period from the age of 21 to 26, I got worse. My career fell apart, really, because I fell apart. And a lot of factors fell apart, but I can see now as an older man that was what I call a God thing, in terms of God seeing the bigger picture of my life, my destiny, my future. And I think not allowing some things to come to pass, because if I'd have made it, you know, on another level of fame, I don't think I'd be here to tell the story that I'm telling today, because I think I'd be in a grave, dead. I would have overdosed, and I nearly did a few times. So from the age of 21 to 26, my drug taking went from, you know, a 1 day, 2 day a week thing to a 6 day, 7 day a week thing. I'd go on massive binges and cycles of addiction, taking cocaine and ecstasy, smoking weed every day, drinking most days. When I wasn't taking drugs or having crack cocaine or whatever I could get my hands on, and a lot of my friends were doing the same thing. So it wasn't just me, you know. So I was in an environment that did that. You know, I'd go on these cycles. When I wasn't taking drugs, I'd be vomiting and recovering, and then I'd get back in the cycle again. The lowest point I got to was taking heroin, and I did that for 8 months, and that's where I lost everything. Connection to friends, family, spent every penny I had. In the end, I was selling stolen goods to cash converters to support a drug habit. You know, a young man, a little boy that had had it all. I fell apart. I really did fell apart, and that was, I think, the darkest point for me was probably from 24 to 26, where I couldn't get my life together. I wouldn't turn up on time, or if at all, you know, to auditions or work, and that's when people started to back off from my world. But again, I think that hastened events in terms of a want to change.
I hear that quite a lot. A few weeks ago, yeah, we had WYNNE Fidelis Owen. He's the CEO of the Living Room in Cardiff, and that's an addictions charity. And he said the same thing. You know, you've got to want to have the help. You've got to want to change. You've got to want to accept things as they really are. So that's what you did. You come to that place when it was like, you know, was it a cry for help?
I think circumstances shouted at me more than anything. I almost ran over a police officer. I'd moved back to Australia. I was doing some work with a cover band, trying to just make ends meet. And I was partying one night, and I stumbled out of a club at 7 a.m. I was 25 years of age. I forgot to put my headlights on. I drove off out of the car park. A police officer ran out in front of the road and shouted, "Stop." And I thought I'd driven right through him, Jonathan, in my mind, because I was wasted. Yeah. But he phoned my car in, obviously, and I was obviously alive because I kept driving. And then he phoned my car in. I was put in prison, and it was in prison that I thought, my life sucks. What have I done? And I think that was the shard of light in a dark moment that really spoke to me of, your life is an absolute mess. What are you going to do? So I moved back to the UK, and then things progressively got a bit worse before they got better. But I met a backslidden Christian lady. So she had 1 foot in her career and 1 foot in the church. She was working for a guy called Michael Barrymore at the time, who was very famous. I know he's in a lot of trouble right now and what have you, but God bless him. But So my ex-girlfriend worked for him as a personal assistant. So she was in the industry. She offered to help me get my career back together, although we broke up when she found out I was taking smack, taking heroin, but she remained a friend. And I actually, I had an encounter with God at her house on the morning of the 26th of August, 1996, coming down off drugs and alcohol and vomiting everywhere. I'm a nice guest. I had an encounter with God in her bedroom, of all places, not in a church. And I know that sounds dodgy to a lot of listeners, but you know, God can meet you anywhere. And I had such a profound encounter with God that it shook me to the core. And I didn't realize it at the time, but she was a part of a church called Hillsong in London. So she took me down to meet the leaders of Hillsong after seeing me be delivered and have my encounter with Christ. She took me down to meet the pastors and leaders. They prayed with me. They moved me out of her house like lightning. And they put me in a house with two other young lads, my age, 26. It was like a bachelor pad. And they fed me and clothed me for about a week, helped me get back on my feet and helped me get a job, a job. And then I became a waiter. But I didn't care anymore because I didn't care about the career bit anymore because I'd had fame. So I got plugged into church, Jonathan, and was there night and day, lugging keyboards around London to different small home events. And then we'd do church on the Sunday in the heart of London as we built Hillsong Church. And I felt like I'd died and gone to heaven because I'd met Jesus and he changed me. So, you know, slowly I rebuilt my life. I went back to Australia, by the way, right. 9 months later for the Hillsong conference and was a part of the London Hillsong worship team doing some stuff there and ended up staying at Hillsong for 4 years. In Sydney, I sorted out a warrant I had out for my arrest because I had left the country before I went to court about the police officer thing. So I sorted all that out and just continued to rebuild my life.
So it's almost, well, it's amazing. I mean, an encounter with God. I mean, I hear sometimes people say, you know, I found Jesus. Do you feel like actually Jesus found you?
I would call it more an awakening.
Oh, I like that.
But I don't doubt that God was always around me, but I wasn't aware of it. But this was so profound. I mean, you've obviously been in church a long time too. You've been in ministry and you've been there, done that, got the T-shirt, and you know Christ. When he really shows up in a profound way, you can't doubt that. And you can never transfer that to someone else. You've got to have that experience yourself. The room was like electricity, but it was like someone, you know, got a bucket full of liquid love and they poured it all over me. And I was immersed, soaked in this awareness of the beauty of God's presence, love, grace, kindness, peace, power. But it wasn't external. This was like an infilling, but an awareness of that took my breath away. It was like, all I could say was, oh God, forgive me. Oh God, I'm sorry. Oh, and it was breathtaking, literally. And I've never been the same. And what I didn't realize was that every addiction was removed, like burned out of me.
Wow.
I didn't want for cigarettes. I couldn't even use profanity. You know, I'd been touched by a holy God. I didn't want heroin.
Wow.
I mean, that's a strong force, that. Like everything. I mean, I was into everything. I realized the next woman that I would be with, you know, like that, would be under a covenant of marriage. Of course, I broke up with my ex-girlfriend and I waited 5 years of rebuilding me to meet my future wife. Met her in Sydney. She's from Bradford, England. And I moved here to the UK to marry her. But so many things happened in that moment that I unpacked for months and years later, that they were downloaded in that moment. Took me a while to figure out what that was. But I knew it was Jesus. I did know it was Jesus. That was the weird thing.
And you can hear the second part of our interview after this song. This is My Jesus, I Love Thee.
This is the Sunday Morning Brew with Rev. John Brewer on WYNNE Evans Show.